Hello everyone, and welcome to another little tutorial for Franchise Hockey Manager 7 slash Hockey in general. Um, so I'm ARG, and I am going to today walk you through some things that you need to know about tactics. So that's something that was asked of me, and I am planning for this to be my last tutorial video. If you haven't watched the other tutorial videos that I have put out, they are on my channel. So in the video description there should be a link to my channel, so you should be able to find the playlist for those. So I'm planning for this to be my last tutorial video unless I have other requests about things, functions of the game, or even hockey in general. So if there's things that you're not too sure about how that works, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to put out a video for that. Might take a minute, but I will get to it. Right now, this is coming out because those of you who also follow my Tampa Bay run, I ran into a game stalling bug, so I cannot get any further in my save right now until Out of the Park Development fixes my save. So I figured that I could come out here and do the tutorial for the tactic stuff finally. So the tactics, that's something that they have added in the game. I want to say 2 versions ago. It was a little bit rudimentary, and then they kind of fleshed it out a little bit better. I like how they have put, or I should say, I like how it is now for the tactics. Is it a full representation of what it is in hockey in general? It's good. It's not perfect. They kind of had to make it gamey for it to work, and you're gonna see what I mean by that. And if you've dabbled in there a little bit, you probably already know what I mean. But we'll get to that. Excuse me. So, um, when it comes to tactics, and that's pretty much true in real life as well, in the NHL or in pretty much any hockey league that you have, there's pretty much 2 ways to look at the way that you're going to handle tactics. I'm not going to say that there's a better way than another to do that, because I think it really comes down to preference, but one of them surely is a little bit more flexible than the other. So I am not going to tell you what is the best way to handle tactics per se. I'm going to explain basically what I mean by those 2 different ways to handle tactics, but I'm not going to tell you, well, this way is better than the other. That's up to you to figure that out. So basically, there's really 2 school of thoughts, I guess, on tactics. The first one is you have a hockey team. Your hockey team has different type of players. You have fast players, you have slower players, you have young players, you have older players, you have players who are pretty rugged and physical, others that are more, agile and try to avoid contact as much as possible. You have great shooters, others that look like they shoot the puck with a wet noodle. So you have a hockey team that's built with all kinds of different players. So the first way to look at tactics is to try to mold the tactics to what you have available to you, because a hockey team roster, regardless of the league, is kind of an evolving ecosystem, right? You never, at least, I'm not super familiar with rosters in Europe and everything, but you very rarely, if never, going to see a team that starts, the season like in the NHL on October 3rd and have that roster on October 3rd is going to be the same in April on April 15th. There's going to be waiver claims, there's going to be injuries, you're going to recall players, you're going to make trades, you're going to sign free agents, you're going to do all of that cool stuff, right? You're going to lose players to free agency or through the waivers, and your roster is going to be kind of a fluid thing. Okay, that's normal. Of course, you're probably gonna try to hold on to a core of players that you're identifying as what you want to build around. But there's going to be moving parts, so your team is going to change. That's normal. So it's kind of normal that your tactics are going to change as you go, right? So if you trade a couple defensemen that are more like stay at home, rugged, tough guys that don't necessarily skate all that great, or don't have a whole lot of offensive output, and you replace them by younger defensemen that are fast and can shoot the puck like laser beams and everything. Well, you might want to adjust your tactics for that because your team changed. So you're identifying, okay, my team went from having the back end that's kind of heavy and not super good at handling the puck, and we now have those guys that can fly down the ice and everything. So I need to adjust, for both the offensive and defensive side of that. So that is the first way to look at how to handle tactics. It's to identify, okay, my team is built this way, therefore I am going to have them try to play this way because I believe that's going to be the most optimal way for the team to play according to what I have. And you never know when you're going to have a trade offer that's going to completely change the face of your team. So I mean, if you look at my Tampa Bay run, for example, LA traded Luc Robitaille to Vancouver for Pavel Bure. So getting a young Pavel Bure with lots of speed and everything kind of changes the dynamic for LA in my particular save, because Luc Robitaille had he had great assets and he had a great shot and everything, but he wasn't exactly fleet of foot. So adding a guy like Bure, who is still a scoring threat, like kind of like Robitaille is, but younger and faster, that kind of changes the dynamic. So you would think that you would need to adapt the tactics to reflect that. So that's the first way. You have, you recognize things change, you make the tactics change as you go. The second way is a little bit more rigid. It is you identify tactics and a style of play that suits you, and you always keep that in mind whenever you try to acquire players. So if you like big bodies to go to the front of the net, for example, you might not want to try and go. You might not want to try to go and get Cole Caulfield. Okay, he's gonna be a great scorer in the NHL and everything, playing for Montreal, but he's a pretty small guy. So if you like big bodies in front of the net to get in front of the goaltender, screen him and everything, probably not a player you should target. So that limits you. So, and of course, and I've talked about that in a previous tutorial video. You usually don't want to have your team all of the same type of players, right? But you can still get players that overall should play similarly to fit different, or to fit the tactics that you want for your team to play. And there's people that are like that, and you see that all the time in the NHL with some coaches. You have coaches that adapt with the players that they have, and usually those are the coaches that last longer. And then you have coaches that it's like, no, we are going to play my system. I don't care who you are. You are going to, block shots, take punches in the throat, and, try to hit people through the boards, even if you're 5'6". So those coaches usually can get a lot out of their players for a year or two, and then usually it doesn't go all that well. So that's really up to you. You might have a really big preference on the style of play that you want for your team to play, and then you're going to be looking at the not waiver wire, but you're going to be looking like at the trading block, and whenever waivers pop up, you're going to look at, okay, can that player fit into what I'm trying to do? Even when you're going to draft, you're going to try to you can try to project, okay, this guy is going to be a power forward, and I want guys to go to the net, so I'm going to go ahead and draft that guy over this other guy that's rated a little bit higher, but he's gonna be like 5'9". So instead of realizing that your lineup is going to be an evolving thing during the course of a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons. Instead, you're targeting specific types of play to fit a way that you want for your team to play, and it can work. It can, but I would say that it probably needs a little bit more work on your end to make that work, because you're always constantly looking for players that fit a particular style instead of trying to like fix holes in your lineup, for a lack of a better term. So yeah, that's really the two ways to look at that. So you can adapt your tactics with the way as your team grows, and well, let sometimes you don't grow, sometimes you regress as well. So as your team grows and regress, you're trying to adjust the way that you play. I mean, sometimes you make a trade and the players that you get don't exactly play up to what you thought, and then you might need for your players to play a little bit tighter defensively to make up for the lack of offense you're not getting anymore. So that's method one. Method two is really targeting players that fit a specific type of uh, play that you want for them to play, and then targeting that, and then trading guys that you have that don't really fit in that mold, and it can work. Both ways can work. I have a preference for the first way, but you can make it work the second way as well. All right, sorry, gotta keep you hydrated, right? All right, so now that's all nice and dandy and everything. We're gonna look at the Tech6 screen. As you can see, I don't have any lines or anything like that. Well, a lot of those Sense players are not with the team anymore. I'm still using the same save that I used the first time that I made a tutorial, so a lot of those players are not on the team anymore, which, it doesn't matter for what I'm doing. All right, so obviously today we're gonna focus a little bit more on the Tactics tab that's right here. So the first thing that you notice when you go into Tactics is that there's a whole lot of stuff over here, and it can feel overwhelming. And I mean, even me, for somebody that's I like to think that I have a pretty good hockey head. I might not be an NHL GM or anything like that, but I've followed hockey all my life and everything, and I understand hockey better than most. Maybe not the best, but anyway, even for somebody like me, that's a lot of information here. And you have the global tab here, so that's the global way that you want for your team to play. So we talked about what I said about you want your team to play a certain way and everything. So that's pretty much where you're gonna get that the going here. So that's the tactics for the overall of your team. You want your team to play to attack more intensely, of course. You drag that to the right. You want them to not be as as intense, I guess. I can't think of the word, but you go towards mild. Now keep in mind, and it's all a balancing act, right? Yeah, of course that's cool. Oh yeah, I want oh yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, everybody back checks. Yeah. Okay, well, your players are gonna get tired. It's cool and everything to have everything cranked up, but that's maybe more for playoffs hockey. During the course of a regular season, your players are going to get tired, and I don't know how the game works fully in the back end because I did not design it, but that gives you probably more fatigue, which probably leads to more injuries and everything. So you have to keep that in mind, right? So the tactics that you choose and the intensity and everything is going to affect how tired your players get. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, then you have, all of the global tactics here. Pull the goalie down when you're down 1 goal, 2 goals, and then you choose how slow you want to react to that or fast. Because even if you play out the games, you don't exactly control any of that. goalie switch. Do you want to do you want it to be fast? Do you want to give more leeway to your goaltender so that he can allow 9 goals, and then 9 goals against Detroit, and then he goes and complain to the GM that he wants to be traded. That's up to you. Um, Personally, fast or normal is probably the best. I would probably put it at normal or slow if you're playing historical like me. Coaches back then had the tendency to be a little bit more patient with their goaltenders. Very slow. I probably wouldn't do that. Your goaltender's pride might take a hit there. All right, and so then we have the face-off priorities. So as you know, because we've talked about that before, your typical hockey team is going to have 4 lines, right? Usually, and I talked about trying to build a lineup optimally. Although don't watch my Tampa Bay save. It might not be a very good example right now. I'm kind of struggling, and that's okay. I'm not perfect, but that kind of gives you a little bit of control over who's starting. So whenever there's a stoppage in play, for example, you go and you attack, you shoot at the net, goaltender covers the puck, there's going to be a face off, right? So that's an offensive zone face off. So choosing that here kind of lets you choose who gets priority over the others for that face off. So the way that we have it here, it would be, the computer would look at the first line first, then second, third, and fourth. Of course, if your first line is completely gassed and, no more energy because they were on the ice for almost a minute, then the computer is going to look at the second line. If they have enough energy, they are going to go in. If not, it's going to go to the third and everything. It's kind of the same thing for the defensive zone face-off priority. Although it's kind of it's kind of different for that, because usually your third and fourth line usually are gonna be your guys that are a little bit better defensively. Not necessarily all the times, but usually your third line is probably the line that's the most proficient defensively. But in your game it might be different, so you might want to look at the individual ratings of your players so you can figure that out. So that would be, so for example, the other team shoots, our goaltender covers the puck. There's a defensive zone face-off priority. Who do we send to take the face-off? Again, the computer is going to look at third line first, then and so on and so forth. And then you have line matching. Line matching is still a thing. If you're talking about today's NHL, it's not as prominent as it used to be. It used to be like very, very, very prominent, like back in the 90s and 2000s. Coaches would match lines like crazy, especially like a guy like Jacques Lemaire with the Devils. He would line match like crazy because he wanted for the trap to be effective, so he wanted to make sure that he had those players against that line and everything. And you still see that to an extent, but a lot of coaches now are plenty fine with going power on power. That is what they call. So basically, line 1 against line 1, line 2 against line 2, line 3 against line 3, line 4 against line 4. You can do whatever you want. I don't think that there's necessarily a good or a bad way to do that. It's really depending probably on the composition of your team. Is your first line so good that it can go against absolutely anybody, or do you have not so much offensive prowess, but you have some good defenders and everything? Maybe you want your third line against the opposite team's first line, to try to neutralize them a little bit more, because your first line is not that great offensively, maybe not that great defensively either. I mean, we all get into those spots where our first line is not exactly what we wish it would be. We sometimes wish it was a little bit or a lot more. It happens. So that's up to you to see what are the strengths and weaknesses of my team so that you can line match properly. Personally, when I was still doing my tactics, I'm the type of guy that does, first line against first line, second against second, but that it could be different for you. That's not the only way to do it at all. Right, and then we have the tactical tendencies. Excuse me. So we talked about that a little bit. A little bit. If you crank everything too intense, well, your players are going to be tired by the end of the second period or something. So it's all about pacing it, and there's other ways than to do it through here too. Now the good thing is that if you mouse over, oh, you cannot see the mouse overs on the video. That's interesting. All right, so there's mouse overs. I promise I'm looking at them right now, but for some reason they're not showing on the video that I can see there. So whenever you mouse over those, like back checking here, it's going to tell you generally what it is. And again, I mean, I'm not going to read them all on screen here. Again, it's up to you to identify what you have on your team, or if you want to have a team play a certain way, it's up to you to identify where you're going to put all of those sliders so that the team overall plays in a manner that seems efficient to you. Excuse me, it's allergy season. I am somebody that suffers from allergies, and if you follow me for a while, you know that whenever the temperature changes drastically, my throat, I've never smoked in my life, and sometimes I feel like I have the throat of a guy that smoked 2 packs a day all his life. But anyway, so then you have all of the different tactical settings, and this is probably, I'm guessing, and I could be wrong, I'm guessing that this is where, some of you wanted to see, what is what, and there's many of them, and again, I'm not going to read through all of them, but what I want to explain is that, first of all, those tactics are a pretty good indication of what you would see in the NHL. And by the way, I'm sorry about my neighbor and his crazy truck there. That's always super loud. So, um, so they make sense. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say is that that stuff is not like stuff that the developers have just decided, oh yeah, okay, we're gonna make it do this and whatever, we're just gonna put stuff that, I mean, the tactics are legit. Okay, and then you have, is it, no, it's not here. Okay, you even have the 131 Boucher. Now, Guy Boucher is not a goaltender, a coach that coached the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then he coached the Suns for a few years. So that is specific to the way that he would do the 131, because you have the 131 trap as well, which is kind of different. So again, I'm not gonna read through all of them, and I'm sorry if you thought that I would, but. And this is the part where I said that it's a little gamey, and I understand why they did it that way, and I think that it works for the most part for what they're trying to do. I mean, this is a simulation. So, and it's in the description. So basically, you have different selections. So let's say we say stretch, right? So it's going to tell us, okay, lowers chance of defender getting a hit during breakouts and makes it more likely that the puck carrier will pass rather than skate the puck out. All right, so if you read that, okay, you're like, okay, so if I have guys that are decent passers but not great skaters, okay, that might be something that I want to use. Best used with wingers with good passing and skating skills. Okay. And then it tells you what it's strong against. It's strong against the 2-3 press, but it's weak against the 1-2-2, and that's where it's gamey. And I almost want to say that it's like almost like Pokemon. Now, bear with me. What I mean by that is that if you've ever played a Pokemon game, is that every Pokemon has a strength and a weakness, right? So Your certain Pokemons are going to be really strong against another type of Pokemon, but they're going to be really weak against abilities from that other Pokemon. So that's basically what we're seeing here. Okay, you can replace strong versus 2-3 press by strong against fire, and weak versus 1-2-2 by weak versus water or whatever. You know what I mean. So that's why I said it's kind of gamey, and it's up to you to look at that. Now the thing is that you cannot really go and check what what the other team's strategies are, right? So you can't really go and be like, okay, well, I'm about to play the Rangers. I'm just gonna go and check what their tactics are, and I'm just gonna put all of the best against them. Obviously, we can't really do that. Also, it would take an enormous amount of time. You might not want to do that. I know I don't, but I mean, if you would, it's up to you. But anyway, so that's why it's really more important to tailor those to your team, right? So either with the team that you have or with the way that you want for your team to play. All right, so then you have neutrals on offense, okay, and it's all about reading and trying to make sense of what it says there while keeping in mind that it is gamey, right? So everything almost everything that you see here is going to have a strength and a weakness to try to balance things out. You don't have a tactic that's going to be better against absolutely everything. Just like, you can't win constantly if you play a Pokemon game by just spamming fire skills, because eventually you're going to hit a Pokemon that is resistant to fire. Well, just like in that ear, eventually you're going to run, against a team that is playing 1-2-2 when you're trying to play stretch, and then you're gonna be exposed for that a little bit. So, and I think, and I understand why they did it that way, and I think that it overall is going to. I think that it makes sense because in Aki at the base of it is a very simple sport, and I know that there's all those tactics here, and it's like, oh my god, how can he say that it's simple? There's so many rules and everything, but truly, when you once you have the players on the ice, it is a fairly simple sport. It is not like ridiculously complicated or anything like that. So it goes with saying that if you play a certain way, if the other team notices that, they can exploit the weaknesses of the way that you play, because there is no way that you play that is going to be without any fault at all. If you're too passive, trying to forecheck, you're giving them all the time in the world to get set up and make passes and then try to beat you with speed. If you are too aggressive on the forecheck, then you might be exposing your defense back. You might not have enough players back. It's all a balancing act again, and that's why I understand why they did the tactics the way that they did. Yeah, and it's true for absolutely everything else. Forecheck, okay, I want my forecheck to be 2-1-2. So whenever you see numbers like that in a tactic, that means two up front, one in the middle, two in the back. Okay, the neutral zone coverage is one up front, three in the middle, and one in the back. And what that means is, okay, so okay, so like the opposite team is here and your team is here, right? So they are going to be attacking towards your net over there. So if you're 1-3-1, you're having just one forward that's going to be kind of pressuring the guys that are trying to build the attack, and you're gonna have three guys that are gonna be behind him now, not necessarily standing still, but they are going to be kind of roaming an area behind that first guy here. so that it kind of clogs. Usually it's going to be in the neutral zone or between the center line and your blue line. You're going to have kind of like three guys that are going to be roaming over there, so that there's not a whole lot of room to go in with speed, so that you have a lot of sticks that gets in the lanes to intercept passes and everything. And then you're going to have one guy there. Now of course that doesn't mean that the guys are not going to back up. If the other team comes in, of course everybody's going to back up into the zone to go and defend. They're not gonna just leave that one guy there to defend. But that means that on the initial pressure from taking the puck up, you're gonna have one guy that's gonna try to disrupt the play, and usually what the first guy is going to do. So whenever you have like 1-3-1, or for example 1-2-2 lock, or 2-1-2, usually what the first layer tries to do is to push the offense towards the boards. Okay, you usually don't want to give up the neutral zone. When they say giving up the neutral zone, they usually mean like through the center with speed and everything. So you always try to, when you play defense, you always try to push the offensive players from the other team either towards the boards or towards one of your other players, so that you can kind of create a log jam, if you would, so that there's not enough room for them to make a play. Of course, the best players are going to be able to still make a pass through 5, 6, and 8 legs and whatnot, but usually that's kind of what you're looking at defensively. So the first layer tries to do that. The second layer, again, tries to pin them on the board, or tries to steer the offense into an area of the ice that you're comfortable with, which again usually is against the boards, because it's a lot harder to score from along the boards than it is from down in the slot, where you're right in front of the net and you're like, oh my god, I have all that room to shoot. Now from the boards, your angle is a lot smaller. So that's why when teams play defense, they try to push the offense into a different angle that the offense is trying to go. So they're either trying to get them to the boards or to another layer of defense for that team. And that's what it tries to explain here. So I know that some other YouTubers might have made some nice graphs and everything. I only use my fingers. My girlfriend likes my fingers, but she likes my hands for whatever reason. Anyway, so keep in mind, you have offensive zone attacking. This is how you are trying to attack as a team, right? So and it all tells you over here. Makes it more likely the team will take a shot rather than passing, and increases the chance of the team getting a screenshot or tipping a shot. So that's for when you are in the zone. How are you going to set up? Again, slot overload might be something that you're looking at. I made the example earlier about power forward screening the goaltender and everything. Well, if that's what you want, or if you have the players for that, you might want to look at slot overload, because that's exactly what it is. Going to the net, trying to disrupt what the goaltender can see, trying to get a tip and everything. A very good prototypical player that was that for slot overload was Thomas Holmstrom, playing for Detroit, was one like that. If you want to look more these days, okay, Sans Brady Tkachuk, that's the type of player that he is. So that's what you want to see. Again, it's going to have a strength and it's going to have a weakness. They almost all do. All right. Defensive zone coverage. How are you going to play defense in your own zone? So we talked about trying to prevent the other team from getting into your zone. Defensive zone coverage is, okay, the other team got into our zone, because they will eventually. I mean, it's impossible to keep the other team completely outside of our zone all the time. You want to limit their chances. You want to limit the control that they have when they do gain the zone. But sometimes they will gain the zone. So how are you going to defend once they are in? So again, you choose, strict zonal. Okay, assigning strict zonal matchups in the defensive zone works best when all players have good positioning skills. Strong, weak. So again, is that the best strategy for your team? Again, it depends on what you have. Do you have players whose most strength is to play their position well? That might be. I mean, you can play, man on man. Okay, assign strict man to man matchups in the defensive zone. Left D to right wing, right D to left wing, C to C, and etc. Works best when all players have good physical skills. Okay, so again, do you have good skaters with good physical attributes? Then maybe you can do man on man. Actually, oftentimes that's how the Sens play. Or they used to this season for their defensive zone coverage. Now, of course, the Sens have not been that great, but that's not because it's not a viable tactics necessarily. Then you have, okay, power play breakout. How are you going to attack? You're on the power play. How are you going to go in? Because it's going to be a little bit different. The other team has at least one less player, right? So you have more room. How do you want to abuse that? Okay, the one thing that's super popular in the NHL this nowadays is the drop pass. Okay, so do you want to do the drop pass? Uh, the Sens really sucked at it, by the way, and I'm really glad that they stopped doing that because they couldn't get it done. But it works for some teams. If you have like guys with speed, it kind of changes the angle of play, and then you have like the guy that's training behind getting the puck with speed that he can come in, while the other team had to kind of get settled and kind of stop because they're ready to defend. So that's a way to kind of try to get in with speed, but some teams can pull it off, some others can't, and the Sens couldn't. Okay, once you're in, how do you want to set up? Okay, do you want to do umbrella? I like umbrella personally, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best one. It's just what I like to do because again, I like to have one D-man that's kind of my quarterback, and then uh, run kind of on the outside and then try to make plays from there. That's a preference. Power play defense. Okay. Um, excuse me. You're still on the power play, but the other team gets the puck. What do you do? Okay, again, choose what fits your scheme better. Short-handed forecheck. Okay, you're getting a penalty. Are you super passive when the other team is trying to get into your zone, or do you try to attack and get the puck back? If you have speedy forwards that are really good at taking the puck away, you might want to try to do that. Otherwise, you might want to try to back out. Short-handed the defensive zone coverage. All right, so you're getting a penalty. The other team is in. How do you defend that? Basic bucks, aggressive bucks. Do you have players that have enough speed and enough defensive recognition to be able to play that? Depends on your team, of course. I feel like I've said that a few times. And then you're getting a penalty, you get the puck. What do you do with it? Do you just dump it, go for a change, or do you try to go and get a short-ended goal? So again, that's what that's for. Now I know that I didn't go through absolutely every single tactics here. That would take forever, and I'm trying to be thorough, but I also don't want to bore anybody to sleep. So it's all about, okay, do I want my team to play a certain way in that situation? Okay, the situations are all explained here. The breakout, the attacking team's approach when exiting the defensive zone, entering the neutral zone. So that's how you try to gain access to the offensive zone, right? And then you have all of those sliders so that you can decide as a team what is going to be basically the overall philosophy. Now, we have unit as well. So what does that mean is that, all right, so for example, I don't have lines here, right? But if I had a line here put up, then it would tell me how good it is here, and then I can decide to override the team's tactics at a line level, right? So let's say that my first line is super talented, score a ton of goals. Let's say that my second line is crazy talented, score a ton of goals. Let's say that my third line is crazy talented, score a ton of goals. I know, right? That's the dream team. My fourth line, not so much. My fourth line is a bunch of washed up vets that are good defensively and, you know, they can barely skate backwards, and sometimes you wonder if they have a stick in their hand. So like three crazy good lines and one really crappy one. Well, so what you can do is to have your settings here set for overall for good offense, geared towards the speed of your team and how many goals that they score. So you set all of your tactics in here, but that doesn't really fit your fourth line, right? Because your fourth line has no speed. I mean, right? So what you can do is you can come here and then come to your fourth line here, and then you can decide that to give them different you can decide to give them different assignments, basically. So maybe, okay, yeah, we're not gonna attack as much as the fourth line and everything. So instead of having the entire team play the same way, regardless of which line is on the ice, you can decide to kind of change the mentality for a line, and then you can say, we're going to use those instead. And it doesn't have to be for all of them. You don't have to change absolutely everything for the line. Maybe you just want for your fourth line to be high tempo. Everything else, I want to keep it the same in the middle, but I really want my fourth line to let's say to hit a lot and have a lot of tempo. Then I would come here, put the check marks in there, and it's going to kind of override the settings that I have here. So you can do that for even strength 5 on 5, even strength 4 on 4, and those are that's gonna be pulled all from the lines that you put up here. So maybe that you don't want your team to play on the power play the same way if they are 5 on 4 than they are 5 on 3. So instead of having everybody playing, as the template of your team, you can come to the unit, decide I want my first unit of 5 on 4 to play this way, and then I want my second one to play differently. And you can do that. So basically, this is like your template for your team, for the entire team. Okay, we are all the same. We all play the same regardless of who we are. Now, unit is, well, lines are different from, one another. I need to make some changes. And again, it's only gonna trigger for what you choose as use here. And then you have the other layer. Maybe you have one player that you really want to play a certain way that's kind of different from the rest of the team, usually because of their specific skill set. Well, you can do that here. So it's going to be pretty much the same thing as here, except that you get to come here and kind of adjust the sliders. So okay, I want Thomas Chabot to not hit so much. I want him to pass and shoot more, and you can kind of make him that way. So basically, setting your player for the different sliders here and making them use said sliders is going to trump how he plays on the unit. If you change how the unit plays, your first line, if you change that and select the checkboxes here, it trumps what you've selected here. Now, if you don't change anything in unit and player here, your players are, for the most part, and regarding their ability and ratings and everything, that even if you put shooting too often and passing too often, not everybody's a good shooter or a good passer, right? We need to understand that here. But to the best of their ability, if you don't change anything in the player or unit tab, your team is going to play kind of the same way. And by that I mean, they're going to follow whatever you put here to the best of their ability, which is why it's usually good to specialize some players. You don't want to come here and specialize absolutely every single player and then override everything and then come and do that here and do the same thing. You want to do that for I don't know if it's the right word, but for outliers. Okay, so if you have one guy that's, kind of a goon, well, you might want to, put the hitting up and aggressiveness up so that he fights and hits a lot. But if the rest of your team is really not into that, well, that's a good way to have your goon play like a goon while the rest of your team plays the way you want. So this is, okay, at the player level, trumps at the unit level, trumps your global tactics. And I think that's probably understanding how that works is probably one of the most complicated things in the game. So understanding that, choosing that here is going to override everything else that you put in here, but only for Thomas Shabbat. And then you have, of course, his roles. And we went through roles in previous episodes, so I'm not going to go through that again. Okay, so the role is going to give you kind of an overall of how the player is going to play. And then you can really kind of change kind of his behavior, if you would, And then you can change the behavior of a full line, and then you can change the behavior of your whole team. I'm hoping it makes sense. I tried a few different angles, even using Pokemon, because as you know, I like other type of games as well, so I might not be the only one. So I try to use a couple examples that people would understand. But that's Tactics in a nutshell. I hope that that's kind of what you guys were expecting from this. I tried to explain it in layman's terms as much as possible. I even use fingers for a visual representation. Maybe one day I'm gonna have enough equipment, time, and everything, and I'm gonna use maybe, real hockey footage or whatever to display what I'm trying to say. But for now, we work with what we have, right? So that's pretty much it. I hope, again, that it makes sense. If there's something that I didn't cover right that you would like for me to maybe explain more, feel free to leave me a comment. I will get to you. I try to get back to everybody pretty quickly. For my European friends and viewers over there, I mean, I'm usually sleeping when you're making comments, so obviously that's, there's going to be a little bit of a delay there, but I usually try to get back to everybody. So if you have questions, feel free. Something wasn't clear, or if I did a shit job at explaining the tactics and that's absolutely not what you were looking for, let me know and try to explain a little bit more in detail what you want, and I will try to rectify that. If there's something else about the game or Alki in general with the rules or rosters or anything like that that you're not super comfortable with by now, let me know and I'll try to make another video that explains that stuff a little bit more in detail. And of course, I'm always open for comment and whatnot. So That may or may not conclude my tutorial series. Again, it depends basically on if any of you have more things that you want, but if I don't have any more requests, this is going to be my last tutorial video for Franchise Hockey Manager 7. You're always welcome to follow my Tampa Bay Lightning run and everything. And of course, as usual, I do want to thank you for tuning in and giving me the opportunity to try to teach you a little bit more about hockey, tactics, and everything in between. And if you've liked this video and you would like to help support me and my channel, please feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment, and all of that good stuff. And, well, I'll see you guys and gals maybe later. Thank you.